On November 6th, a CIA officer, formerly of the Navy's elite SEAL Team 6, is killed in an explosion set off by the Somali-based Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab. The CIA operative, along with 4 Somali officers, reportedly died during a raid on the group's suspected hideout south of Mogadishu. 4 days later, on November 10th, ISIS-linked fighters behead 50 people in a soccer stadium in northeast Mozambique. Then, on November 29th, Boko Haram Islamic fighters slaughter 110 Nigerian farmers, men and women attacked in their rice fields. Steve Killalay tracks terror around the globe for the Australia-based Institute for Economics and Peace. He tells CBN News the center of gravity for ISIS and other Islamic terror organizations is clearly moving.
Sub-Saharan Africa now has a higher number of people killed through terrorism than the Middle East and North Africa.
Killalay's group publishes the annual Global Terrorism Index. He says while the death toll from terrorism around the world has dropped, Islamic terror attacks in Africa are surging.
We look at the 10 countries with the largest increases in deaths from terrorism. 7 of those countries are in Sub-Saharan Africa.
Burkina Faso, Mozambique, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Mali, Niger, Cameroon and Ethiopia among those witnessing a spike in attacks this year. The State Department's head for counter-terrorism, Ambassador Nathan Sales, describing to reporters during a digital press conference about what drives this wave of terror, whether in Nigeria or Mozambique.
What we're seeing today is a committed ISIS affiliate that embraces the ISIS ideology, that embraces the ISIS tactics and procedures, and that embraces the ISIS vision of a caliphate.
And the jihadist groups are recruiting followers. 10% of those recently surveyed across 14 countries said they'd been approached by radical Islamic groups. Michael O'Hanlon is with Brookings Institute.
There are a couple 100 million Islamic Africans, Muslim Africans, and if only 0.01% are tempted by extremism, that's still several 100,000 people we may have to worry about.
Nigeria sits at the epicenter.
Nigeria is where the most lethal and most active external Islamic State province is located.
Jacob Zen writes extensively on Boko Haram, the Nigeria-based Islamic terror group. According to the Global Terrorism Index, Boko Haram, which has pledged allegiance to ISIS, has been responsible for more than 57,000 deaths since 2011.
And their increasing capabilities over the past few years has been alarming.
Boko Haram leader Abubakar Shekau, now Africa's most wanted man, wants to turn Nigeria Islamic and force Christians, half its population, to either leave, convert to Islam, or die.
This is the most important country in Africa, the 10th largest oil reserves in the world, the largest economy on the continent.
Johnny Moore, co-author of the new book, The Next Jihad, called what's happening here nothing short of Christian genocide.
It's the exact same playbook that ISIS used against Christians and Yazidis in Iraq. And in fact, you might say that Boko Haram was the test case even before ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Boko Haram was already killing more people in Nigeria, Christians in fact, than ISIS did at their height in Iraq and Syria.
It led the State Department last week to call out Nigeria for failing to stem the religious persecution, the first time a democracy has ever been cited for violating religious freedom.
You know, it's one thing when North Korea does this or when Iran does this, but this is a democracy. There has to be rule of law in this country.
And lack of security is a chief factor fueling the jihadist movement.
Of course, many of these African countries have very weak governments, which means there is frustration among many of their people, and there's also difficulty in providing security. So the government doesn't have the ability to find and stamp out these kinds of extremist groups.
With terrorism increasing, Ambassador Sales says African governments need to focus on confronting violent extremism. 25 active Islamist groups now operate on the continent. That's up from just 5-10 years ago. And according to The Intercept, the U.S. has 29 military bases across Africa, almost all engaged in the fight against Islamic extremist groups.
Our emphasis in boosting counterterrorism capabilities, not only in Africa but around the world, is to bolster law enforcement and border security and countering the financing of terrorism capabilities to really defeat the ideology that inspires some people to embrace radicalism and violence.
George Thomas, CBN News.